बिस्मिल्लाहिर्रहमानिर्रहीम। अस्सलाम वालेकुम स्टूडेंट्स। उम्मीद करता हूँ कि आप सब लोग खैरियत के साथ होंगे and I welcome you all here today to the fifth lecture of consumer psychology. As usual, let us start our day with a brief review of what we discussed in our last lecture. Our last lecture was a detailed discussion on three drivers of the marketing concept. These included number 1, customer value, number 2, customer satisfaction, and number 3, customer retention. We defined customer value as the ratio between the resources a consumer spends and the perceived benefits of a product that consumer gets. We further mentioned that the resources that consumer spends include number 1, the monetary resources. And when we talk about the monetary resources, these are including number 1, the price of the product, and number 2, the non-price costs of the product, which is called consumer cost. Along with that, consumer spends time and exerts efforts into purchasing the product, and then simultaneously there is a wide variety of psychological motivations that also get involved in the whole process. We mentioned that the benefits that a consumer gets out of purchasing the product are number 1, functional benefits, which are associated with the use of the product, and number 2, monetary benefits, and number 3 are a number of psychological motivations also. Students, owing to the adoption of the marketing concept, companies gradually started concentrating over providing maximum customer value to their target consumers. And in doing so, they found out that consumers are more attracted towards the total perceived value of a product. We defined in our last lecture that perceived value is the relative value of a product that exists in the mind of the consumer. For example, a gentleman goes to a restaurant with a very high level of expectation and he gets extremely dissatisfied with the experience where his expectations are not properly met with. However, there is another gentleman who goes to the same restaurant with a lower level of expectations and he has a wonderful experience over there. So for the first gentleman, the value in the whole experience has been very little, while for the second gentleman, the value in the whole experience has been huge. So companies started concentrating more and more over the perceived value of the product. This helped them shift their focus away from the product into the entire value to the consumer. We finally discussed that owing to perceived value, there was gradually a shift from the unique selling proposition of a product to the value proposition of a product. And when we talk about the unique selling proposition of a product, we are talking about a particular salient feature of a certain product which attracts the consumer into purchasing it. So the perspective when we are talking about unique selling proposition entirely gets into the product. But when we get into the concept of value proposition, then we are talking about the entire value that a product provides to the consumer. So with the small change in the words and terminology, the entire perspective actually changes. We then discussed the concept of customer satisfaction. And we mentioned that customer satisfaction is an individual's expectations or desires with the usage of the product in relation to his desired expectations about the product. And we defined that consumers whose expectations are met with their experience would be satisfied consumers, and consumers whose experience is not met with their desired expectations will be dissatisfied consumers, and the consumers finally whose experience exceeds their expectations would be highly delighted customers. However, when it comes down to individual personal interpretation of these experiences, then all those experiences which do not meet with the required satisfaction level of the consumer are interpreted as the negative experiences. And all those experiences which meet with the desired expectations are not considered as positive experiences by the consumers, but those are considered as merely neutral experiences. Because this is more like thinking that I pay the right price in order to get the right value out of the product, so there is nothing extraordinary. However, when the consumer's expectations are exceeded, which means that his level of satisfaction has been extremely high, then this consumer will be extremely delighted consumer and his experience will be interpreted as the positive experience. Students, with reference to customer satisfaction, we defined 5 different types of consumers, which were called number 1, apostles, number 2, loyalists, number 3, defectors, number 4, terrorists, and number 5, mercenaries. We mentioned that apostles are the consumers who have had in their related surroundings while meeting with their colleagues, friends, or families. We mentioned that loyalists are the consumers whose satisfaction level is pretty much high, and they go on purchasing the same product from the same company over and over again for over years. And such kind of consumers are usually less price sensitive, so companies focus more and more upon retaining these consumers and maximizing their profits over a longer time period. We mentioned that terrorists are the consumers whose experience with the product has been extremely negative. These are the consumers who purchase a product thinking about it in an entirely different fashion. However, when they start using it, it turns out to be an entirely different thing. So these consumers would spread an extremely negative word of mouth about the product. We then mentioned mercenaries. Mercenaries are the consumers whose satisfaction level usually is pretty much maintained. Sometimes it is rather very high level of satisfaction. However, just for the sake of experience or for the sake of getting better price, they would like to switch on to another company. We finally discussed the concept of customer retention. And we defined customer retention as something that makes it in the best interest of the consumer to stay with the company rather than to switch into another company. Students, we had a brief discussion on the concept of customer retention last time. And since we were running short of time, I could not elaborate this concept before you in our last lecture. So in this lecture, I would take a few minutes to further elaborate on this concept. We discussed that why customer retention is important for the companies. Customer retention is of increasing importance to the companies. And gradually, nowadays, companies are always having their strategic corporate objectives to retain more and more customers. Why customer retention is important is because today's market environment is extremely tough. We can consider today's market as groups of people segmented into many different categories, and each segment of consumers is being targeted by many different companies who are more or less making the similar products. So for these companies, the competition in the market has always been very tough. On the other hand, when we think about the consumers for satisfying their variety of needs are getting a number of products, which means that the choice available to them in terms of the available products in the market is pretty diverse. So in this kind of environment, it is extremely costly and difficult for a company to gain more and more new consumers. So owing to this spirit, companies tend to focus more upon the existing customers and provide them with maximum value. However, in order to maximize the profit, they look at a customer not just as a one-time customer, but they try to calculate the total number of purchases that a customer could make over a lifetime of his period, which is why a new concept emerged, which was customer profitability focused marketing. Owing to customer profitability focused marketing, companies tend to build up selective relationships with their target consumers. When we are talking about selective relationships are built with the consumers based upon their respective profitability. A consumer retention savvy company, which means that companies who are smart in terms of consumer retention, they are always trying to monitor the consumption and volume patterns of their different consumers. And when they identify good consumers from the bad consumers, they provide expedited customer services to the good consumers so that they could maximize the value available to the good consumers. And while doing so, their main objective is to keep the good consumer coming back over and over again and go on purchasing from the same company. To explain the intricacies of customer retention, let me give you a brief example from the banking industry. The modern shape of the banking industry is consumer banking, and banks are providing many different services along with the regular financial services that they have usually been offering to their target consumers. These new products include, for example, personal loan, auto loans, or credit cards. In our example, let's talk about the credit card customers. For a bank, the good credit card customers are the ones who always make their purchases using their credit cards. This ensures that the bank's finances are in the rolling. However, these good consumers are always quick to pay back their bills by the due dates. So if you see that the good consumers of the bank not only use the credit cards to make their purchases, but they are also quick to pay back their bills by the due time. This way the bank's finances go on rolling and bank can maximize their profit out of these good consumers. And the bank, in order to maximize their profit, would like to provide expedited services to the good consumers. However, there are some bad consumers of the banking industry as well. The bad credit card customers would be the ones who either hardly use their credit cards, they just have a credit card for the sake of having a credit card, or maybe they just keep credit card with them for a rainy day. Their purchase level from the credit card is very, very low. On the other hand, there are other bad consumers who, when they get their credit cards, they spend entire credit card within a few days, but they never pay back their bills in the due time. This way they keep the bank's finances stuck up with them. Now, banks can differentiate between the good consumers and the bad consumers. One striking feature of the good consumers would be that they have developed their loyalty with the banking institution, and bank may offer them other products as well. And while they are offering other products to these good consumers, they might provide them with some extraordinary services as well. Maybe they can provide them with a lower markup rate, or maybe if they are sometimes, if by chance they get late in paying back their bills, then the penalty for paying the late bills can be waived for the good consumers. However, if the bank starts doing the same thing, providing the same services to the bad consumers, then bank's finances not only will get stuck up, but a lot of staff of the bank would be stuck up in handling the queries that will be coming from the bad consumers. Sometimes it happens that the bad consumers come up with a lot of queries as well. While their purchase level, consumption volume is very, very low, however, they are always interested in learning about the new products. They are always keen to find out a mistake with the existing services. So they come up with a lot of questions and they keep the customer services department always busy and engaged. Now guess what? If a bank has a lot of such consumers, then their customer services department will always be tied up with answering their queries, while they will be left with little time to focus upon the good consumers. In such cases, sometimes an extreme step is taken, which is like firing the bad customers. So students, you must have understood from the example that when banks or other products manufacturing companies start classifying their consumers with reference to their profitability, then they are entering into the domain of customer profitability marketing. At this point, let me tell you that companies find out or coin different kinds of tiers in order to classify their target consumers. These tiers are correlating to different profit levels of the target consumers. A popular classification that is used comes in the shape of 4 tiers of the consumers. These 4 tiers include number 1, platinum tier, number 2, gold tier, number 3, iron tier, and number 3, lead tier. When we talk about the platinum tier, these are the consumers whose spending volume is very, very high from a particular products manufacturing company, or they are always purchasing the same brand of the product from a particular company. So their spending volume is very, very high, and usually such customers are also less price sensitive. So the companies would like to offer them other products as well and increase their profit by maximizing their sales to the good consumers. And while they are doing so, they are also ensuring that their bills will be paid back in time and the sales level will be achieved on a very higher level. However, when we talk about the gold tier, then these are the customers whose consumption level is high and who have pretty much defined loyalty with the particular company or product also. However, these kinds of consumers are always on the lookout for changing into another product or into another company. These are the customers whose loyalty with the brand is established, but they would not hesitate trying for other brands as well. The next tier is the iron tier. Consumers in the iron tier, their purchase pattern is characterized by the low spending volume. Such consumers always purchase very low. However, their loyalty with the company is pretty much established. For example, there might be a gentleman who never uses jams or jellies in his breakfast, but he always keeps a bottle handy in case of a guest arrives. However, every time this gentleman purchases a jam or a jelly, he purchases from the same brand. In this case, his loyalty with the product is pretty much established, but his spending volume is quite low. And the final tier is the lead tier. Consumers in the lead tier, they have a very, very low spending volume, as well as their loyalty with the brand is also not established. Such are the consumers who always come up with complaints and queries also. We have mentioned these kinds of consumers in our preceding discussion. You may just remember that these consumers usually tie up the company's resources and go on costing the company. And in extreme cases, companies usually fire such kind of consumers as well. Students, during the last 4 lectures, we have been talking about the marketing concept, its evolution, its further development, and we have talking about different variations in the marketing concept as well. The 3 drivers of the marketing concept that we studied in our last lecture were customer satisfaction, customer value, and customer retention. These were being discussed in the background of a variation in the marketing concept, which is called value retention marketing concept. At this point, I would give you a brief comparison of the traditional marketing concept as well as the value retention focused marketing concept. During this comparison, you would find out that we would outline all the details and different points of the marketing concept as well as the variations in the traditional marketing concept. So let's move to our point number 1. Our point number 1 of the traditional marketing concept was, which evolved from the product concept, production concept. The traditional marketing concept started from an emphasis over making the products that would sell, rather than selling the products that a company makes. This was an evolution from the preceding thinking before the traditional marketing concept came into being in early 1950s, and the preceding concepts were production concept, product concept, and the selling concept. And entirely, as I mentioned in our previous lectures, that the world started thinking that why not make all those products that would actually sell with the consumers. And before doing that, they had to understand that what are the consumers' requirements and desires about certain kinds of products. However, the variation in the value retention focused marketing concept was going away from this point into concentrating into a new domain as well, which was use technology that enables customers to customize their products. So as you can see, students, the first point of the marketing concept was making the products that consumers need. However, the one step forward was while making the products, let's give consumers an opportunity to give their suggestions as well, and develop the products that would be customized according to the consumer's requirements. An example that we have been discussing in this perspective was the example of the modern sports shoes companies who on their official websites provide an opportunity to their target consumers to come up with their own color scheme with reference to their required sneakers, as well as sometimes some leverage is also provided in terms of the design of the sneakers. So eventually a customized product is prepared for every single customer available in the market, which provides maximum consumer value to the target customer. Point number 2 of the traditional marketing concept was, do not focus on the product, instead focus on the need that it satisfies. And we found out that we are driven by many different needs when we are talking about our products. And these needs not only include our logical needs, which are related with the usage of the product, but these are also related with the psychological aspects of our personality. Certain kinds of needs are emerging out of just the basic desire of satisfying certain of psychological motivations. However, at this point, there was a variation in the traditional marketing concept, and the value retention focused marketing concept went one step forward to mention that focus on the product's perceived value as well as the need that it satisfies. We have had a good deal of discussion on the concept of perceived needs. However, at this point, just remember that when we talk about the perceived needs, we are not just talking about the basic needs that a product fulfills, but we are talking about a range of psychological needs as well. Let's move on to the point 3 of the traditional marketing concept, which says market products and services that are required by the consumers and that would serve the consumers better than the competition. If you concentrate upon this point, it emphasizes upon the importance of the products and services. And it emphasizes upon the fact that each company should come up with products that would serve the consumers' needs in a better way than other companies who are in competition with this particular product. However, the value retention focused marketing concept takes one step forward and mentions utilize an understanding of customers' needs to develop offerings that customers perceive as more valuable than competitors' offerings. Students, if you concentrate on this point, you will find out that the focus is being shifted away from the product into the analysis of the needs and desires of the consumers. And products are taken into the perspective of developing certain product offerings. When we talk about the product offerings, we are talking about not only the product and the services, but the way these products will satisfy the consumer's needs. So consumers' needs, the pattern and behavioral patterns to meet with a certain need while using a certain product is of more and more importance here. In order to provide maximum value to the target consumer, the offerings should be designed in such a way that they facilitate consumer in every aspect of the purchase and every aspect of the use of the product. So consequently, all of the advertisement owing to this point will change into the need satisfaction pattern rather than using the product or purchasing the product. Students, at this point, let's move to the next point of the traditional marketing concept, which is based upon the differentiation between the research paradigms of the traditional marketing concept and the value retention focused marketing concept. Point number 4 mentions that research consumers' needs and characteristics. Well, if you understand that this is a very general type of research consumers' needs and understand their characteristics. There are many different kinds of companies that are operating in the market. They are coming up with different kinds of products. And if they are conducting this kind of generalized research, then it is not focused upon a certain product or a certain service that a particular company is offering. The value retention focused marketing takes one step forward and mentions that research the levels associated with various consumer needs and characteristics, which means that companies, in order to maximize their profits, not only need to understand the needs, but also need to understand that what profit level is associated with the satisfaction of certain kinds of needs. Point number 5 of the traditional marketing concept is understand the purchase behavior process and influences on consumer behavior. Once again, the traditional marketing concept is having a very generalized approach, which means just understand the purchase behavioral process for the sake of understanding the consumers in better and better way. However, no particular or specific target consumers are being concentrated upon. So, simultaneously, influences on the consumer behavior of the purchase process is also important. However, once again, the focus is extremely generalized study of the consumer behavior. However, the value retention focused marketing concept takes one step forward once again, as it emphasizes upon understanding consumer behavior in relation to a company's particular product. So, we are entering from a generalized approach to a very specific approach, which means that we study the consumer purchase process and consumer behavior with reference to the use of a certain product, not a generalized study of the consumer behavior. Point number 6 of the traditional marketing concept emphasizes upon realizing that each customer transaction is direct sales. When we talk about each customer transaction as direct sales, then we are considering each sale as just one-time sale, which means that customer comes to the shop and purchases something, and that's just all about it. Emphasis is never laid down upon the long-term perspective on how many times a particular customer can come to purchase the same product over the period of his or her lifetime. So if you further focus, you will find out that this concept of considering each customer transaction as direct sales has a very, very limited perspective. It never enters into the long-term understanding of the customer. The value retention focused marketing takes one step forward and concentrates upon the relationship dimension with the customer. Owing to this point, companies will start focusing upon building up their relationship with the customers. And when we talk about relationships, relationships are never one time. They are never just one-time transaction that just takes place and that just goes over. When we talk about relationship, we're talking about a long time period, which is based upon staying together in an environment of mutual understanding. So owing to this concept, companies gradually started concentrating over building up stronger, healthier, and mutually satisfying relationships with their target consumers. So the perspective immediately changed from the short-term profits to the long-term profits. Students, point number 7 of the traditional marketing concept is something like this. Segment the market based on customers' geographic, demographics, psychological, socio-cultural lifestyles, and product usage-related characteristics. If we concentrate upon this point, then once again our approach is kind of very, very generalized. Even though we are talking about the particular segments and we are fine-tuning our understanding of the consumers coming from different demographic backgrounds, however, we are not doing it with reference to a particular product or a certain objective in our mind. The value retention focused marketing concept once again goes one step forward and mentions that use hybrid segmentation that combines traditional segmentation basis with data on the consumer's purchase levels and patterns of use for the company's products. Over here, we are talking about monitoring the sales and the purchase volume of each and every consumer and their consumption patterns as well, so that we could understand that a particular product, when it is being sold, then what are the different categories of consumers who have a higher appeal for this product and who have a higher purchase level with reference to this particular product. So this is something more like customer profitability focused marketing. Point number 8 of the traditional marketing concept mentions upon targeting large groups of customers that share common characteristics with messages transmitted through the mass media. If you look at it, this is more like one-sided communication which is generated through the mass media. When we talk about building a relationship with the customer, then relationship is never one-sided. Each communication that takes place between the two parties is always a complete pattern of sending a message which is understood by the target audience and then getting the feedback from the target audience or the target party. In this process, an understanding gradually builds up between the two parties who are engaged in the communication, and over a longer time period, through fine-tuning communication, a better understanding is developed between the two parties. However, in this point of the traditional marketing concept, we find out that all kinds of communication is being done through using of the mass media, but some generalized messages are prepared which are constantly then bombarded to the target segment. The value retention focused marketing concept once again takes one step forward and emphasizes upon the use of technology that will enable you to send one-to-one promotional messages via digital channels. If you concentrate, according to the traditional marketing concept, a generalized message is prepared and bombarded over a larger segment of population. However, the digital revolution that emerged in 1990s enabled the companies to communicate with each and every single individual consumer available out there in the market. So the generalized messages were not only being bombarded through the mass media, but internet provided an opportunity to access each and every single individual. So this way, all the communication of the company was not to a generalized mass of people existing out there in the market, but companies were also able to visualize every individual customer and tailor their message according to the requirement of every individual customer. Let's move to the point number 9. According to the point number 9 of the traditional marketing concept, use of one-way promotion was advocated, whose effectiveness is measured through sales data or marketing surveys. If you concentrate upon this point, the traditional marketing concept concentrates over promotional messages that are designed for a larger number of people. However, the effectiveness of those promotional messages are measured in terms of the sales data that has been received and the different marketing surveys that have been conducted in a generalized fashion in the market. The value retention focused marketing concept once again takes a step forward and mentions use interactive communications with the target consumers, which means that each and every subsequent message that is going to the target consumer is in relation to the response that the company gets from the consumer with reference to their previous message that was originated. So this time around, we enter into a domain where proper communication is taking place between the companies and the consumers. And this proper communication is taking place in the real time, where companies send one message, its effectiveness is measured, and feedback from the consumer is gathered up, and the next message is designed in the light of the feedback that has been received from the previous message. So if you concentrate, you will find out that the real-life communication is taking place in the real time, in which messages are being transmitted, feedback is gathered up, and the next message is prepared in the light of the feedback that's been received in relation to the previous message. Point number 10 of the traditional marketing concept emphasizes upon creating the loyalty programs based upon the volume purchased. If we analyze this point, the loyalty programs are not particularly tailored for particular classes or tiers of the customers. Loyalty programs are based, the design of the loyalty programs is based upon the eventual volume that has been purchased from the market. And no distinction is being made between the consumers who purchase more and the consumers who purchase less. So once again, the traditional marketing concept has been extremely generalized in its approach. The value retention focused marketing concept takes one step forward and mentions the fact that loyalty programs should be created based upon the tiers of consumers with reference to their spending volume. We have discussed this point in the customer profitability focused marketing already. However, just remember at this point that different companies would tend to classify their consumers in different tiers with reference to the profit that they can generate from each class of the consumer. Point number 11 of the traditional marketing concept mentions encouraging customers to stay with the company and buy more. If you look at it, the whole emphasis is upon coming up with strategies to have the customers stay with the company for a longer time period. However, the value retention focused marketing takes one step forward and emphasizes upon making it very unattractive for the customers to switch to a competitor and encourage them to purchase better in a way that will raise the company's profitability levels. We discussed this concept in a bit of detail in the while discussing the concept of customer retention, in which we mentioned that customer retention strategies make it possible for the customers to feel that if they switch on from one company to another, this is extremely unattractive proposition for them, because the company that they are staying with provides them with maximum value, which they will not find in another company or in another brand of the product. Point number 12 of the traditional marketing concept mentions determining marketing budgets on the basis of numbers of customers you are trying to reach. So once again, if you concentrate, you'll find out that the approach is quite general, as you are focusing your budgets upon the number of customers that you can reach in the market. However, the traditional concept has been taken lead upon by the value retention focused marketing concept by mentioning that base your marketing budget on the lifetime value of typical customers in each of the target segments compared with the resources needed to acquire them as customers. Let's analyze this point. The new point mentions that we not only look at the customers just as one-time customers, and we don't think about every sales as direct sales. However, we concentrate over the relationship. Once we start concentrating over the relationship, then we are looking at the customer from a long-term perspective. And long-term perspective means that a customer in his lifetime can come back over and over again to purchase the same product. So if this is so, then the marketing budgets need to address this basic point also. So in the traditional marketing concept, while the budgeting is being done with reference to the customers available in the market, the value retention focused marketing budget will be based upon accessing a customer for a longer time period. And this will be done with reference to the resources that are needed to acquire people out there as customers. Point number 13 of the traditional marketing concept is conduct customer satisfaction surveys and present the results to the management. Once again, our approach is quite generalized in nature. Owing to the traditional marketing concept, we simply go in the market and try to study that what is the level of satisfaction of the consumers, and we come back with the results and present them to the management, and management in the light of those results further fine-tune their marketing strategies. However, when we talk about value retention focused marketing, it emphasizes upon conducting customer satisfaction surveys that include a component which studies the word of mouth as well. Since value retention focused marketing concept always emphasizes upon relationship, then words of mouth are very important words that are originating in the market from the mouths of the target consumers that need to be highlighted in the communications. So they will come up with research designs and research patterns in which they will study the words of mouth that are coming up in the market. The word of mouth is then immediately used in the communication, and it creates a level of intimacy with the target consumers. Point number 14 of the traditional marketing concept is create customer trust and loyalty to the company and high levels of customer satisfaction, which means that we try to find out the customers whose purchase level is very, very high, and they are extremely delighted customers. And then we come up with marketing strategies as well as the communication and promotional strategies that would help us develop better bonds of intimacy with these good consumers. And once our bond is getting stronger and stronger with these good consumers over the time period, the profits will eventually be maximized. Students, I hope you understood the comparison between the traditional marketing concept and the value retention focused marketing concept, and you were able to appreciate the fine details of differences. You must have realized that it is a travel of ongoing development that started a long time back from the product concept and production concept and selling concept and eventually the marketing concept. And this time around, in the modern days, even the marketing concept is being developed and new innovations and variations are coming up, which is helping companies to fine-tune their communications with the consumers and build up better and better relationships. Customer profitability focused marketing is always considering the purchase patterns and volumes of different consumers and emphasizing upon building up better relationships with such kind of consumers. So eventually, these variations are enabling company to still maximize their profits and provide maximum value to their target consumers. At this point, students, let's progress our lecture forward, and we will study a simplified model of the consumer decision-making process. While the consumer decision-making process tends to get very, very complicated, however, we will not go into much of the details and we will keep our model very simplified today. In order to build up the reference to understand the consumer decision-making process, let me give you a small example. Let's suppose there is a gentleman who has had a successful academic career, and after that he lands into the first job of his career. This gentleman has been dreaming of purchasing his own car for a very, very long time. And after a few months to a year's time period in the job, he gains confidence and professional experience, and he finds out that this is the right time to meet with his dream, to materialize what he wished for once upon a time. So this gentleman starts thinking about purchasing his own car. The moment he comes up with the recognition of a need in his mind that he's going to purchase a car, suddenly all the cars on the roads become more and more meaningful, and he finds out that his interest level in every car is being increased. At this point, this student would move forward and communicate with his relatives and friends and get the advice of the colleagues as to what kind of cars are good and what kinds of cars are not so suitable. Simultaneously, the student would be concentrating upon his social background as well and would try to watch that what kind of cars other people in his social background are driving. At this point, he might start thinking that does he need to stand out from his social background or does he want to stand in his social background? So when all of these processing is being done, suddenly all of the advertisements of the cars in the newspapers, magazines, and television become more and more important and meaningful for him. And certain kinds of cars on the roads are also more visible to this gentleman. These are the cars that, these are the range of the cars that this gentleman might purchase eventually. After all this complicated processing that is going on in the mind of the consumers, in the mind of this young man, eventually he makes a decision about purchasing a particular car. Then suddenly, two kinds of influences are very important upon him. Number one is the social influences that includes his relatives, family members, social class, colleagues, as well as there is a wide range of internal factors as well. Maybe the student starts thinking, how would I look like driving a particular car? How would this particular car satisfy my different needs? How would I go to office? How am I going to go on the long drives? And how the entire process is being very, very attractive for me. So you could see that there are social influences as well as the individual influences. And finally, the third main influence comes from the marketing efforts of different companies who are manufacturing cars. Their marketing mix-related activities are constantly influencing this young man's mind into purchasing different kinds of cars. However, at this point, he's not able to make the decision. This will take some time. You would have understood the example. Now let me take you to the actual decision-making process. And while I will make you go through the actual decision-making process, I would appreciate that you could remember the salient features of this example and could see them in the decision-making model. Students, if you concentrate upon the example, you will find out that while making this decision, this young man is going through at least 3 different stages. Stage number 1 is input stage, stage number 2 is the process stage, and stage number 3 is the output stage. Let's talk about these stages individually. When we talk about the input stage, we find out that student is not only having the need recognition in his mind, but he's also being influenced by his colleagues, by his family members, by his social class as well. And simultaneously, there are a number of internal motivations that are impacting the student's entire decision-making process. So at the input stage, the basic objective is to create a need recognition in the mind of the consumer. And at this stage, 2 kinds of influences are considered very, very important. These come from, number 1, the sociological and psychological background of the individual, and number 2, the personal influences and motivations upon the consumer. We then enter into the process stage, and when we talk about the process stage, over here, of particular importance are the internal psychological factors. There are a number of reasons because of which this consumer or this young man might want to purchase a car. This might be a wish to improve one's social status. This might be a wish to ease out one's routines and having the facility of moving on to his own transport while going from one place to another place. So this is essentially the commuting need, which is a basic need a car would satisfy. However, then other kinds of psychological needs would be that how do I look like sitting in the car? How does sitting in a car and driving my own car adds up to my personality? So in the process stage, internal factors in a person start mixing up with the external factors that were influencing the consumer in the input stage. And finally, there is the output stage. In the output stage, the consumer decision-making process consists of two closely related post-decision activities. These include number one, purchase behavior, and number two, post-purchase evaluation. For low-cost, non-durable items, a repeat purchase is more likely to signify adoption of the product. For example, if you want to purchase a shampoo, then your initial purchase process maybe starts with the company's advertisements, or maybe with the company's coupons by using which you could get the bottle of shampoo on a subsidized price. However, when you start using this shampoo, only then you would find out that what is the real worth of this shampoo, and eventually your consequent purchase would ensure the adoption of the product. But when we talk about durable items that would stay with the consumer for a long time, just like the car we mentioned in our example, then the first purchase would facilitate the process of adoption. Because the car has been purchased and now the gentleman starts using this car, now he has adopted this particular model or brand of the car. So at this point, let me show you the entire decision-making process on the slide. If you look at the slide carefully, you'll find out the three stages carefully charted out. Number one is the input stage, where external influences are very, very important. Number two is the process stage, where consumer decision-making actually takes place. And this is interlocking with the previous stage in a way that the inputs from the external environments are mixing up with the internal factors within the consumer. Now this stage is further interlocking with the output stage where the post-decision behavior is taking place. There are different skills and abilities that are also required from the consumer psychologists. Since consumer psychology is essentially a field where extended analysis is required to come up with the desired outputs from the profession of consumer psychology, so essentially the capabilities and personal skills that are needed to become an effective consumer psychologist also are related to the ability to analyze numbers, available data, and have a fine understanding of the human behavior and a very sharp eye to observe the people while they are going through different behavioral patterns. So good consumer psychologists are always not only good observers, but they are able to combine the theories that they study in consumer psychology with the observations that they are making in the real life. And another essential capability required is to understand the data in terms of the numbers and then come up with predictions. Students, if you, at this point, let me tell you about different journals of consumer psychology as well. If you are interested in further, in the modern researches, what kind of modern trends are emerging in the field of consumer psychology, then I would refer you to this particular slide. On the slide, you could see you could see some journals, which are number one, Journal of Consumer Psychology, number two, Journal of Consumer Research, number three, business research journals such as the Journal of Advertising, the Journal of Marketing Research, and the Journal of Marketing also contains research focused on consumer psychology. Finally, there is research in consumer psychology that can be found in major journals in the social psychology, including the Journals of Personality, Social Psychology, the Journal of Experimental Social Psychology, and you could see that there is a wide list of journals of different branches of the psychology which will provide you with relevant up-to-date information with reference to consumer psychology as well. Finally, students, let me give you a recap of what we studied in our first chapter. Once again, I would refer you to the slide to read the key terms that we have discussed during this chapter. These include consumer psychology, consumer behavior, consumer decision-making process, consumer research, consumer retention, customer satisfaction, customer value, digital revolution, marketing concept, marketing ethics, marketing mix, market segmentation, personal consumer, positioning, societal marketing concept, and targeting. Finally, students, let me give you one point of distinction between consumer psychology and consumer behavior. Consumer psychology is the study of human responses to products and services related informations and experiences. Many kinds of informations are important in consumer psychology that include beliefs, adjustments, purchase process, personal motivations, and then other kinds of informations are also important, which include advertisements and promotional strategies, communication. When we talk about consumer behavior deals with how products are evaluated and chosen by consumers, and what information is paid attention to and what is ignored. Students, this is the end of our chapter number 1. In our next lecture, we will start chapter number 2. I think this is just about the time we should finish our lecture as well. अपना ख्याल रखिएगा, अपने दोस्तों का ख्याल रखिएगा, and I wish you very best of luck during till the time we meet next time. Assalamu alaikum.